when a shipping clerk's idle scheme turns into the biggest heist in U.S. history, no one's more surprised than he is. But sudden wealth can have lethal consequences. Friday, December 8, 1978, New York's Kennedy Airport. It's business as usual at the Lufthansa Overseas Cargo Terminal. Each year, billions of dollars in cash and merchandise clear this room from all over Europe. The lure of this untold wealth can be intoxicating. And a Lufthansa shipping clerk named Louis Werner fell deeply under its spell. Deep enough to be in way over his head. When he wasn't gambling away his paycheck, Louis Werner and his best friend and co-worker, Peter Grunwald, thought up ways to rip off Lufthansa. Years earlier, they even drew floor plans and copied employees' schedules. In fact, they devised what seemed like a perfect plan, except for one crucial detail.
The only thing that required the plan to work were robbers, which Grunwald and Werner had terrible difficulty finding.
They fought over what to do next, and their friendship disintegrated. The plan sat, nearly forgotten. As months passed, Werner went further into debt. He began receiving threats from his bookie, a man named Marty Krugman. Marty Krugman hung out at a bar called Robert's Lounge, which lay just outside the airport and just outside the law. Robert's Lounge is one of those places you wouldn't want to be caught dead in. Though for the guys who come here, being caught dead is an occupational hazard. It was the haunt of a gang of hoods and cronies, known predictably as the Robert's Lounge Gang.
Their lives was a series of scores. Scores meaning a job, a criminal job, whether it be an armed robbery or to beat somebody out of money, a local proprietor, or a scam. They went from one to another.
Werner, hopelessly in debt, realized he had something that would erase his obligations to Krugman and make himself a little money besides. The heist plans. Krugman shared the idea with his boss, Jimmy Burke, a mob enforcer who owned the lounge and the gang.
Let's go in the back.
Burke had an incredible violent reputation. In one case, Jimmy was known to have broken every single bone in the face of someone who was late on a payment.
Now Burke was in trouble himself. The mob demanded he keep the cash flowing. He needed a lucrative plan. He needed Werner's plan. New York's major crime families had their hooks in Kennedy Airport. Burke would have to have their blessing first.
Let me tell you, I got something lined up. We got an inside man.
Burke told the plan to his boss, Paul Vario, a captain of the Lucchese crime family. Burke promised him the lion's share of the profits. The entire haul was expected to be around $2 million. Permission granted.
No, you're gonna be stationed.
Armed with Werner and Grunwald's plan, Burke and the Roberts Lounge gang hammered out the details. They'd go in late, when only a skeleton crew of 10 was on, striking while the graveyard shift was at lunch. The gang would break into two teams. Team 1 would capture the employees in the lunchroom, Team 2 would secure the cargo terminal. It was a brilliantly simple plan.
Remember, these guys they're not cowboys necessarily. They don't want to go in shooting up a place because it puts a tremendous amount of pressure on them afterwards. Law enforcement will tend to be much more dedicated sometimes when people get hurt or killed. So they don't want to do that. They want to make it simple, low-keyed.
To ensure that simplicity, the Mafia hedged its bets. They sent along a mob soldier to act as their eyes, ears, and if necessary, their hired gun. So Burke felt the pressure for the plan to succeed. It wasn't just a matter of pride or money. It was a matter of life and death. The scheme moved forward. There was no turning back, no room for mistakes.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen. All for free. No subscription required. Download Veely now.
Monday, December 11th, 1978. Just before 3 a.m., Burke's team pulled into the Lufthansa Air Cargo terminal, right on schedule. Once they arrived, the team split. Team 1 rushed into the building. Team 2 pulled the van into position. Clearing the security gate, they moved toward the loading dock, where they would wait for the all-clear signal. Team 1 headed toward the lunchroom. On their way, they split up to sweep for any employees who weren't at lunch.
Don't move! Look, get the other guys! Where are the other guys? In the lunchroom.
They surprised the cargo agent in his office.
He went home. Don't look at us. Good. Oh, you just stay with him. Yep.
One man down, 9 to go. Inside the van, the waiting was becoming unbearable.
Take this off. Can't have
And
it
so
anymore.
were the heavy ski masks.
Jeez, what is going on here? I don't know.
Team 2, away from the action, was lulled into complacency. Team 1 made its way to the lunchroom. Werner's floor plan told the men where to find it.
There's 5 of them.
They made their move. They handcuffed everybody so that nobody could move. They all had masks on so that there would be no issue of being recognized. In a sense, it was fairly professional.
You don't get hurt.
The goal was to capture the supervisor who had the key to the high-value room. Catching him and the other roving employees would present more of a challenge. This was the most dangerous part of the plan. If just one person evaded their net, the whole scheme could crash down around them.
And during the robbery, there was one glitch. A worker for Lufthansa who was doing his rounds came back, and he noted the van and noted that something was suspicious.
When he got out, they grabbed him. Hearing the commotion, the warehouse manager stepped out to see what the problem was.
Come here. I got one right here. Get it. Let's go.
Both men were forced into the van.
Get in there. You gotta stay down. Get your face down. Don't even look at me. Stay down.
Realizing that they had been seen without their masks, the robbers took the captives' IDs and read their addresses.
You, give me your wallet. I'm going to see what's taking so long. Okay, give me your wallet. Turn around. I didn't say you look at me. You ever rat out on me? I'm going to come after and find you.
They threatened to kill them if they went to the police.
I'm going to come after and kill you. You understand me? Do you understand me? Yes. Get down there. You, don't move. Don't move.
All right.
The supervisor, unaware he was being tricked, answered an urgent call to come to the lunchroom
Don't be afraid.
and fell into the hands of his captors.
Get hurt. You Rudy? Huh? You Rudy?
They demanded to know where the security guard was.
I don't know. Don't lie to me. I don't
The
know.
supervisor didn't know. They didn't trust him, so they took him along on their hunt for the guard. The security guard, the only one on the graveyard shift, had been employed at Lufthansa less than 2 weeks. He was still trying to learn the procedures and already grappling with the stultifying boredom of late-night security.
Go, go, go. Hands on the head. Hands on the head. Get out, down, get out, down. Don't say a word. Don't say a word.
Don't move, old man, or your brains will be on the ceiling. Flashlight down.
You got him? You got him?
I got him.
We're coming to you. Come on. Hands on your head. Hands on your head.
Once the guard was subdued, Team
Get over
1
there.
began looking for the 2 missing
Hands on
employees.
the head.
They could be anywhere.
Don't lie to me. I don't know. Watch these.
The garage door rolled open, and they learned that Team 2 had matters under control.
Two. How many you got?
I got 2. Where's somebody else at? Where they all
In
at?
lunchroom, we got 2 down here. Get those 2 in here. Get those 2 down here.
Get out. Let's go.
Come on, come on, come on.
Get out. Get out. Get out. Get out.
Get out.
Get out. Get out. Get out. Get out. Get out.
Everyone was accounted for.
Get out. Get out.
They then forced the supervisor to hand over his alarm keys.
Where is it? Where's the alarm?
It's right there. Wait a minute. Let him do it.
At the last moment, they had second thoughts and had the supervisor turn off the alarm himself in case there was some trick involved.
Don't screw up. Is that it? Huh? That's it? Don't lie to me.
The manager was did the right thing and said, look, take the money, just don't hurt anybody. So everything went as smooth as it possibly could.
Come on, let's go. Around here. Hurry up. Go, 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 go. Come on.
On to the high-value room, where the most valuable items were held until they could be shipped out.
Faster, Rudy. You're not moving fast enough. Come on. Get in there. Go get the other guys. Open it up. I don't have all night. Back up. Hands on your head. Move. Get him out of here.
Come on, get out here. Get out.
On this night, the high-value room held unmounted gems and a shipment of currency en route to Chase Manhattan from Germany. Most were used bills collected from American tourists. Money that's impossible to trace. Invigorated by their success, the men loaded 72 boxes in a matter of minutes.
They kept unloading and unloading and unloading, and before they knew it, they were unloading boxes of money and jewelry until they just filled the van to the brim and had to leave stuff there.
It was time to move out. A little over an hour after they arrived, the Roberts Lounge gang left, richer for the experience. They kept to the speed limit. The van was followed by a chase car driven by accomplices who would try to distract any pursuing police. It wasn't necessary. The getaway was clean and quick. It was just after 5 a.m. when the van pulled into a warehouse garage and out of sight. The men began the happy task of unloading their haul. They'd each get their cut, but only after Burke and the Mafia Dons got theirs. Though the haul looked larger than the thieves had anticipated, it would never make them rich.
That's not how it works in the mob. The top guys get the money, the workers don't get a lot. They weren't getting more than 50,000 each. That was it, 50, 60,000. They weren't going to get $1 million.
Burke asked one of his henchmen, Stax Edwards, to get rid of the van. A car crusher was already reserved. There would be nothing to tie Burke's gang to the crime, or so it seemed. Because Burke immediately took control of the money, his men had to learn about the size of the haul by hearing it on the news.
At approximately 3:45 this morning, what was reported to us by Lufthansa Airlines was a armed robbery of approximately, according to Lufthansa, $3 to $5 million, which has not been verified at this time.
The whole country was talking about it. Final estimate, around $7 million in unmarked currency and $1 million in unmounted gemstones and gold. The loot was virtually untraceable, the haul unprecedented, the timing impeccable.
And then they realized how big it was. And bottom line was it was too much, it was too big. And that's what caused their undoing. That's what they crumbled because of it. It was just too big for them.
The men's fee now seemed like peanuts. It paled in comparison to what the FBI was offering for information about the crime. Some of the gang hinted to Burke that they'd need more money to keep his name out of it. The magnitude of the caper assured that the authorities weren't going to give up until it was solved. The FBI knew by how smoothly it went that it was an inside job. When they questioned the Lufthansa employees, two names kept coming up.
We had people saying that Grunwald and Werner were involved in this. We had enough people saying it, but not enough evidence. Nobody to testify that they knew any of the details. And but we keep an eye on these people.
Is that what you think? You think you'll take the whole?
When Werner arrived at work the next day, Peter Grunwald confronted him right away. He knew that Werner had stolen the plan and betrayed him. Grunwald told him he wouldn't get away with it. Werner was confident he already had. FBI investigators knew that Werner and Grunwald couldn't have pulled it off by themselves. They had another suspect.
When this happened, everybody in law enforcement was taking claim to it because everybody, Port Authority at JFK knew Jimmy Burke. They knew of his involvement at the airport.
It was just a matter of connecting Burke with the crime. The courier and the warehouse manager gave police descriptions of the two men who held them in the van. The warehouse manager got the best look, but it was only a glimpse, and he was too terrified to remember much. This could have been the FBI's big break, but that's not how it turned out.
We tried to do an artist conception with him. We came up with something, but it really never, we couldn't do anything with it.
3 days after the heist, a parking officer in Brooklyn spotted a van matching the one the victims described. The van had been reported stolen. A warrant was granted, and it was searched and dusted for fingerprints. Prints found in the van led nowhere, but detectives did find the wallet belonging to one of the victims. This was definitely the van used in the Lufthansa heist, the van that Stax Edwards was supposed to have destroyed. Several days later, detectives found Stax Edwards shot to death in his apartment.
We knew that he hung out in Robert's Lounge. We knew that he was kind of a knock-around guy. As soon as he shows up dead with a bullet in the back of his head, you put two and two together, okay? He was involved in it. Clearly he must have been involved in it because we knew Burke was involved at the time.
Meanwhile, Louis Werner began receiving portions of his cut, 10% of the total take. It arrived a little at a time in a variety of clandestine ways. Then, unable to control his conspicuous consumption, Werner bought a new van. The FBI didn't fail to notice his newfound wealth. They were already watching him, and they'd learned that his bookie was Marty Krugman of the Roberts Lounge gang. Krugman was the connection to Burke that investigators needed. But when they paid a visit to Krugman, they were only half surprised that he wasn't there. When he failed to reappear, he was presumed dead. His body has never been found. The links between Jimmy Burke, the crime boss, and Louis Werner, the inside man, were breaking one by one.
Every time you got a lead, every time you found somebody else that might have been involved in the case, you would try to act as quickly as possible. So just as we get one thing, the next you turn around, another body, another dead body, another dead end. Extremely frustrating.
The FBI thought if they put pressure on Werner, he'd give them the connections that would lead to Jimmy Burke.
If you're aware of anything,
to get to Werner, they pressed his old friend Peter Grunwald. He was subpoenaed as a material witness.
got our phone number.
And that's when everything starts to unravel. Because once Grunwald is put under pressure, he folds like an accordion.
The FBI orchestrated an accidental meeting between Grunwald and Werner at headquarters. Grunwald had already told authorities about how he conspired with Werner, how Werner stole his plan and robbed Lufthansa without him.
You're crazy.
Werner still proclaimed his innocence.
But I know nothing about it.
Even so, investigators had everything they needed to charge him with the crime. But they were after bigger game. Jimmy Burke and the Roberts Lounge gang. Werner refused to cooperate.
He demanded to go on trial, denied everything. They would say, Louis, listen to us. You can't beat this case. We're prepared to offer you a reasonable deal. You can tell us who you talked to from Jimmy Burke's gang. That's the critical connection we need. Without you, we cannot make that connection.
Investigators say Louis Werner is a
Their pleas fell on deaf ears.
debt to associates of the Paul Berry.
Werner stood trial and received a 15-year sentence. After several months, his thoughts cleared. He decided to talk, to tell authorities who his contacts were. But he was too late.
Now he's finally going to tell the truth. He's going to finally tell the story. What's the problem? The problem is the guy's whose name he mentions is dead because Burke has anticipated just that very possibility.
He was found in the basement hall.
There's a saying that 3 may keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. By killing off most of his gang, Burke had successfully severed his ties to the Lufthansa caper, leaving police with nothing. But the most elaborate American caper of its kind was also the most futile. Nobody involved with the heist lived to spend their money.
Burke regretted the day that he heard about all his money to be robbed at Lufthansa because he said the money turned out to be cursed. Whoever got near that money died or went to prison. It was almost as if the money was toxic.
Jimmy Burke was sentenced to life in prison on unrelated charges. Louis Werner was the only person to be charged for the crime. None of the $8 million has ever been recovered. It's presumed to be in the coffers of organized crime. An impenetrable vault is cracked by an ingenious plan. The losses are spectacular, and the mastermind becomes a folk hero, even to those he robbed. Every summer, Europe's elite flock to the French Riviera to soak up the Mediterranean sun. They spend their millions in the lavish casinos, exclusive boutiques, and world-renowned restaurants that adorn the coastline. The affluent citizens and tourists safeguard their wealth in the vaults of the area's banks. One of the oldest and wealthiest of these fortresses is the Bank of the Société Générale in Nice. Monday morning of July 19th, 1976, started like every other weekday. Minutes before 9 a.m., the officers of the bank went to open the main vault to release the money for transactions. The vault not only held millions of francs in currency, but 4,000 lockboxes. But the inner door proved stubborn. It wouldn't open. The 75-year-old door had been stuck before, and a few drops of oil had always solved the problem. Inconvenienced customers waited with the assurance that their money and valuables resided in one of the most secure spots in Nice. After all, the steel door weighed more than 20 tons, and the walls around the vault were a foot of reinforced concrete. By 9:30, a representative from the company that had manufactured the vault arrived to work on the lock mechanism. He went through the unlocking procedure again and again. With each try, the tumblers moved freely. The lock worked fine. Nevertheless, the door remained stuck to its frame, and no marks showed that the door had been forced. By 11, frustrated customers began to worry. They wanted their money. They wanted to get to their valuables, and nobody was telling them why they had to wait. Anxiety rose all around. By noon, bank management made the decision to break through the side of the vault and see what was jamming the door. The crowd outside grew larger and more impatient. By 3 p.m., the workmen created a small hole through which they could peer inside the vault. The impossible had happened. The bank had been robbed.
Every high-ranking cop in Nice showed up. They knew without being told that this was really an important crime and that the imagination of the world was about to be stuck on it for a long period of time. Anyway, all these cops come in, the customers are still locked out in the street, and the smallest of the detectives present was told to go through the hole and make sure that the criminals were not still inside.
The detective found papers and documents covering the floor, and among the litter, he saw equipment the thieves used to break into the vault.
And he says, and wait until you see what's written on the walls. And what's written is, ni arme, ni violence, et sans haine, which was translated in English without arms, without violence, and without hate.
A quick survey of the vault revealed how the thieves got in and out. A hole opened up to a 30-foot tunnel. It led to the city's underground sewer system. From the quality of the work and the amount of evidence left behind, the police surmised that more than one man had been responsible for this. They were hunting for a gang of thieves that quickly became known as the Sewer Rats. The thieves had left behind 2,500 pounds of equipment inside the vault, more in the tunnel and sewer. The police retrieved 27 acetylene cylinders that had been used to fuel blowtorches. There was venting equipment to bring fresh air into the tunnel. Investigators found a half-mile of electrical cable, as well as waterproof flashlights. The wholesale plunder of the Société Générale made international headlines. The bank offered a $250,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of the Sewer Rats.
They began to bring in detectives from all over France. The amount of work the detectives now were faced with was staggering.
Authorities estimated that the mysterious thieves had stolen some $10 million in currency, jewelry, and precious metals. At the time, it was not only the biggest bank robbery in world history, it was, as heists go, a French work of art.
The police knew that it was done by real professionals. The loot itself and the means used to get it made the investigators realize that it was the heist of the century, and that expression would impose itself on everyone.
It took 12 detectives 4 days to catalog all the vault's contents, but they never found a single usable fingerprint. Police first suspected that it was an inside job. They began interviewing present and former bank employees. They also had to question the thousands of lockbox holders, and they still had to trace back each and every piece of equipment the Sewer Rats left behind. The heist of the century was being followed by the investigation of the century. It was not only a frustrating amount of work. The criminals investigators sought were becoming folk heroes.
I think the principal emotion of the detectives at this time was rage at the people who were laughing at the crime, laughing and applauding at the crime, who went around talking to each other and instead of saying hello and goodbye, they would say, without arms, without violence, without hatred. The detectives couldn't stand that.
While logging the evidence, an officer spotted red chisels. It wasn't the first time he'd seen chisels like this. Days earlier, during a routine search, this same officer saw identical chisels in the possession of a known criminal, Daniel Michelucci. At the time, there seemed nothing particularly suspicious about Michelucci's activities. So the officer let his car pass, but not before making note of what he saw. Nice detectives spread Michelucci's name to police throughout the region in the hopes that someone would report back with more information. A lead came from a small village where 2 police officers had encountered Michelucci only weeks before the break-in. A woman had called the authorities to report suspicious activity at an empty villa in her neighborhood. When officers arrived, they found a group of men waiting outside. They provided reasonable proof that they had permission to hold a party at the residence. One of the partiers had been Michelucci. Days after the crime, the villa visit paid off.
They got a phone call from an informant interested in the 1 million francs reward from the Société Générale. He told them, "You know the people you've checked at the villa? These are the ones responsible for the heist of the century."
Nice police scoured the premises for evidence. Among the items they collected, there was a watertight flashlight, similar to those found in the vault. Dried mud caked to the bottom matched that found in the sewer. Finally, the police had a starting point. Detectives met with the prosecutor, convinced that they had stumbled upon members of the sewer rats. But investigators felt that none of the suspects so far had the skill to put together this operation. They decided to put them under 24-hour surveillance. The next big break came in early October when two men tried to cash gold ingots at a local bank. The teller processed the serial numbers of the ingots and saw they matched those stolen from the bank. She notified the police, and the two men were arrested. Authorities added Alain Bournat and Francis Pellegrin to the list of potential sewer rats. Police began rounding up suspects in hopes of forcing the mastermind to the surface. Through the weeks, the list had grown to include relatives, contacts, and accomplices. All were brought in for questioning. In France, police have the right to hold any suspect in custody without legal counsel for 48 hours. Many criminals crack under the grueling two-day interrogation known as garde à vue.
Somebody gives the police a name, and they go to arrest a 44-year-old photographer in Nice, and he says, "What? Me the brain? You're crazy." And the cops must have felt despair close to it, because he did not fit the profile either, and he certainly sounded innocent. His name is Albert Spaggiari.
Bonjour, que puis-je faire pour vous?
Nothing but the confession of a petty crook suggested Albert was a criminal mastermind. From all appearances, Spaggiari lived a simple life as a photographer in Nice. Friends knew him as a charming romantic who was above all loyal, especially to his wife Audi. The couple preferred living in the country, where they were restoring an old farmhouse. Once he was arrested, a battle of wills began between Spaggiari and the police detectives. For 36 continuous hours of relentless questioning, Spaggiari stubbornly claimed his innocence. The detectives tried every trick they knew, but Spaggiari remained calm. While the interrogation continued, police raided the cottage Spaggiari shared with his wife. The search turned up illegal weapons and dynamite. The discovery gave the detectives the upper hand in the interrogation.
They tried to make a deal, an absolutely illegal blackmail. They told him, "Either you confess that you are the brains behind the heist of the century, or we charge your wife with illegal possession of firearms and put her in prison for many years."
To save his wife, Spaggiari finally confessed to the crime. He detailed exactly how he put together the plunder. The idea came to him 2 years earlier. A neighbor who worked as a manager at the bank let it slip that the vault had no alarm. Spaggiari went to the bank and rented a lockbox. He photographed the interior of the vault and made extensive notes. It would take hours to break into the thousands of lockboxes. He needed a quiet, unnoticeable way of getting in. Fortunately for Spaggiari, Nice had an extensive underground sewer system. For 6 weeks, he endured the stench of the rat-infested maze, trying to find the sewer line that led to the bank. To combat the odor, he smoked or chewed on a cigar. Finally, posing as a contractor, he went to City Hall and obtained a map of the sewer system. With this help, he found the sewer branch that ran nearest to the bank. At its closest point, it still left 30 feet of tunnel to be dug. Spaggiari now had the plan, but not the means to achieve it. So he traveled to nearby Marseille and met with the city's organized crime leaders. The ambitious plan intrigued the mob bosses. In return for a cut of the take, they agreed to provide all the equipment and manpower. Some of the sewer rats were engineers, others electricians. But most of all, the rats were diggers. Every other night in May and June, they went to work. During the digging, Spaggiari set up an elaborate lookout system. With sentries and radios, the tunnelers could be warned and escape in just over a minute. They dug in teams of 3. It was grueling, back-breaking work. The tight space was poorly ventilated and hot. Finally, one of the diggers succumbed to the stress and passed out. Spaggiari reacted like a good manager. He set up a strict schedule. Each team of tunnelers would work only 1 day out of 3. They would dig for 10 minutes, then rest for another 10. There was even a doctor on call in case of emergencies. They strung a half-mile of electrical cable to a nearby underground garage. They now had electricity in the tunnel with which to run ventilators and lights. The sewer rats dug on night after night. Finally, in the first week of July, after 9 weeks of digging, the sewer rats reached the wall of the vault. But they still faced 12 inches of reinforced concrete. They needed jackhammers and drills to break through. Spaggiari feared the noise would be heard from the street above. His fears proved groundless. They would get halfway through the vault wall that night. Next weekend, they would be in. Friday, July 16th, well after the bank had closed for the weekend, the rats began to move. They carried their equipment on inflatable rafts through the sewer lines to the tunnel opening. They still had 6 inches of reinforced concrete to break through. These last inches proved to be the toughest. The drilling took far longer than Spaggiari had planned. It was 2 a.m. Sunday morning when the rats finally entered the vault. The first order of business was welding the steel door to its frame. This way, if someone tried to enter the vault, Spaggiari and his crew would have time to escape. Then the rats went to work. They started cutting into the security boxes one by one, and what they found exceeded their dreams. Jewelry, silver goblets and gold in all forms, government securities, bearer bonds, cash, stock certificates, and banknotes. On Sunday evening, they broke for dinner. Spaggiari provided a gourmet feast: goose liver pate, sausage, soups, cheese, and fish, as well as wine. And they ate their delicacies like kings on gold plates found in one of the boxes. Armed couriers had come to make a night deposit. Pennies from heaven. The plunder continued uninterrupted through the night. The thieves spent a total of 27 hours in the vault. At 5 a.m. Monday morning, Spaggiari declared that it was time to go. The bank would open in less than 4 hours.
When they were ready to leave the vault, Spaggiari got a bright idea. There we see the poet, the artist, the lover of books and writing. Without asking anyone, because the gangsters would laugh at it, he wrote that famous sentence that helped to build his legend. Without weapons, without hate, and without violence.
The sewer rats were long gone by the time the bank officers tried to open the vault. They had broken into a little less than 400 boxes, 10% of the 4,000 total. But it was more than enough. No one expected that Spaggiari would receive more than a 2-year sentence if he fully cooperated with authorities. The victims had been reimbursed by the insurance companies, and the crime had been non-violent. But Spaggiari was determined not to spend a day behind bars for the heist of the century. He cooperated with the authorities, giving them most of the details of the crime, but he never revealed the names of his accomplices. For 20 weeks, Spaggiari met every Thursday with the instruction judge, a French court officer that serves as a combination of grand jury and prosecutor. On the 10th of May, 1977, in the last meeting before his trial, Spaggiari gave the instruction judge 3 pieces of paper with drawings of the Nice sewers. When the judge looked confused, Spaggiari offered his assistance. Attorney Jacques Peyrat, presently the mayor of Nice, represented Spaggiari during this time.
He just naturally stood up. He walked around the judge's desk, got behind him, and he said, "Voilà, we started from here, and we did this, this, and that, and finally arrived there." The judge said, "Good, very good." And Albert, very calmly, started back for his seat. Then, all of a sudden, he opened the window, and in 1/10 of a second, he disappeared.
The authorities never recaptured Spaggiari, nor did they recover any of his share of the money. He did, however, send $600 in cash to the owner of the car whose roof he landed on.
And Spaggiari has now topped the crime of the century with the escape of the century.
Of his accomplices, 3 were acquitted, and 3 found guilty and sentenced to 5 years. Spaggiari himself lived the rest of his life on the run, taunting the police with letters and appearances in magazines. His wife, Audi, didn't join her husband in exile. She remained in Nice, where she continued to work as a nurse. In the end, the mastermind behind the heist of the century died of lung cancer in 1989. World War II, England. A German pilot defies all odds, concocting a bold and risky plan for escape. Before he could fly, he has to crawl. On October 12, 1940, the normally serene hillsides of England's Lake District resounded with the barking of dogs and the tramping boots of the local police and the British Army. They were looking for a German, an escaped prisoner of war. The Battle of Britain had raged throughout the summer and into the fall as Hitler's Luftwaffe tried desperately to wrest control of the skies from the RAF.
The Battle of Britain was just, in the simplest terms, a matter of air superiority. For the Germans to stage the invasion of Britain, they needed air superiority over the beaches. And until they could establish that, there was no way that they could proceed.
However, the British were proving much tougher than Hitler's high command had anticipated. Before the battle was over, the Germans would lose more than 1,700 aircraft, nearly twice as many as the British. And while RAF airmen bailed out over friendly soil, thousands of Luftwaffe crewmen were captured, interrogated, and imprisoned.
The prisoners fell into two distinctive camps. One group were fairly happy to accept imprisonment and wait for their release. Others, the men of action, if you like to call them that, were about wanting to get out and cause problems.
One of these troublemakers was First Lieutenant Franz von Vera, a 27-year-old fighter pilot. He had been captured September 5, 1940, after being shot down during a bombing raid. Von Vera was a notorious show-off, whose charismatic charm made him a darling of the German media. He kept a lion cub as his unit's mascot and claimed to be a disenfranchised baron, wearing a large signet ring which bore his family's coat of arms.
And this picture, of course, got to British intelligence. So as soon as he was picked up, it was pretty clear who he was right from the word go.
Von Vera had escaped from the Grisdale Hall POW camp and had been on the run for 5 days. But now, his pursuers had him surrounded. With nowhere left to run, he had tried to hide in the underbrush.
I surrender!
Franz von Vera was finally recaptured. After serving 19 days in solitary confinement, von Vera was transferred to Officers' Transit Camp number 13, near the village of Swanwick, north of London. He found many former comrades in arms among the prisoners, including Ulrich Steinhilper, a fellow fighter pilot whom he knew from flight training school. Von Vera immediately asked him if there was a way to escape.
We didn't even have time enough to talk to each other about how we were shot down. I said, "Don't you know England is an island? You cannot get home from here." He said, "I will try. I have tried once. I will keep on."
Blackout is at 10.
2 obstacles stood in his way. The first was getting out of Swanwick. The second was getting out of England. Still, he was determined to succeed.
Gentlemen, will be a special mail this morning. Red Cross packages? You can pick them up in the corporal's office.
His confidence and conviction inspired his fellow officers, and even those of higher rank deferred to his leadership.
All right then, roll call. Fritz? Here. Oscar? Here.
He quickly assembled a crew.
Mondera?
Here.
The first was Lieutenant Walter Manhart,
Here.
followed by Lieutenants Hans Wilhelm
Here.
and Doc Wagner.
Here.
The fifth man was Major Heinz Kramer.
We were walking around the barbed wire and didn't find that there was any opportunity. We couldn't imagine anything else, so we just turned to the classic way to build the tunnel.
Here. Helmut. Here.
Roll call was taken at breakfast and twice in the evening, but not at lunch.
Friedrich. Here. All right then.
So by skipping the midday meal, the men were able to work uninterrupted from roughly 10 until 4.
All right then. Dismissed.
Von Vera jokingly named their group the Swanwick Construction Company. Although only 5 men would be escaping, the entire camp was involved in the effort. An elaborate network of lookouts was set up so that warning signals could be passed quickly to the men doing the digging. An unused room in the north wing was the starting point. From there, it was less than 15 yards to the barbed wire. The excavation would pass mere feet from the base of the guard tower, but it was a risk they would have to take. A carefully cut section of floor disguised the entrance. Their tools were provided by the British. Scoops and fire buckets, meant for disposing of incendiary bombs, made short work of the dirt beneath the barracks. With a jam jar and bits of wire, they rigged a makeshift work lamp. It often gave them nasty shocks. 2 men took turns digging, while the others concealed the evidence by dumping the dirt in a cistern on the barracks lawn. Passing so close to the guard tower, any heavy labor in the tunnel could potentially be heard above ground.
Tassen behold! Schnell!
So the lamp also served as a warning signal. The network of men stationed in the hallways could pass the alarm quickly enough. Although the entrance could be hidden in seconds, the telltale signs of digging could not. If the British had come to investigate, they would have found the prisoners covered in fresh dirt.
It was so close to the ground level that it was dangerous that the guards inside or outside might even see, at least hear it. So it was always decided to make noise.
Sturm, Sturm, Sturm,
From that point on, whenever the men were digging, diversion crews went into action. Arguing, singing, and playing the gramophone.
What is that?
While the team spent their days tunneling, at night they discussed their plans to get out of England. Wagner and Wilhelm decided to head for Liverpool, where they would attempt to stow away on a neutral ship. Kramer and Manhard would try for Glasgow, where they also hoped to stow away. But von Vera had something much more audacious in mind. He planned to find the nearest airfield, bluff his way onto the base, and steal a plane.
His idea was to make contact with the RAF directly or through the police, and to maintain that he was a Dutch pilot, Captain Van Lot, who'd been flying a Wellington bomber with an experimental bomb site, and that had to put the aircraft down, but he needed to get back to his base in Scotland very quickly to report, and it was all top secret.
We knew that Dutch pilots had escaped to England. We knew that Dutch pilots were flying for the RAF. He was suspicious that his German would come through. But Dutch is quite similar to German, so he decided, language-wise, Dutch would fit.
To equip himself for this charade, von Vera borrowed articles from other prisoners. A flight suit from one, boots from another, a pair of flying gloves from a third. He would also need some kind of ID. On the pretext of settling a bet, he tricked a British corporal into showing him his identity tag. While the men joked about the bet, they examined the disc, noting the look and feel of it. One of the forgers took an imprint of its exact size by pressing the disc against the palm of his hand.
What did I tell you? What did I tell you? Thank you very much, Uncle Corporal.
Now, they just needed to find some way to copy it. In the meantime, a problem was developing with the dig. They were running out of air. Going up to the face and back was like swimming the length of a pool underwater. Work had slowed to a near standstill, and they were only halfway to the barbed wire.
So what's we going to do?
Then, fate dealt them another blow.
They were digging the tunnel close to the fence. They were meeting with a sewage pipe, a large sewage pipe. Trying to go underneath it wasn't possible because water collected below the pipe. So they had to go over it.
Going over the pipe would bring the tunnel dangerously close to ground level, dramatically increasing the risk of detection, or even worse, collapse. But it was their only option. They retreated a few precious yards and started sloping the tunnel carefully upward toward the surface. There was so little oxygen, a man could only stay at the far end of the tunnel for a minute or two. Walter Manhard was working the face when the unthinkable happened. There was a cave-in.
Walter! Wo bist du? Wo bist
The prisoner's escape tunnel had collapsed, and it seemed Lieutenant Walter Manhard had been buried alive. Although shaken, Manhard was uninjured by the cave-in. When Franz von Vera returned to assess the damage, he found the lamp was still working. And the disaster was a blessing in disguise. The British had buried rolls of barbed wire along the perimeter of the camp to keep prisoners from digging under the fence at ground level. But they never imagined someone might come up on it from underneath. The buried wire supported the ground above it, allowing much-needed air to filter down to the tunnel. the Swanwick Construction Company was back in business. Work now progressed at a rapid rate. On December 17th, while the others watched, Manhard tested the exit point by poking a stick up through the last few inches of dirt. It appeared outside the barbed wire. The tunnel had taken an entire month, but they were through. They decided to make their break the following Friday. As fate would have it, a bombing raid was launched that night. The sound of the Luftwaffe bombs was music to the Germans' ears. It was a perfect diversion, and the forced blackout would give them better cover. It was time for von Vera to become Captain von Lott. His only props were some British cigarettes and the camp copy of the Times. With little more than charm and bravado to bolster his story, he prepared to leave the safety of the camp in search of an enemy airfield.
When you change from the dull life of POW to try to escape, you are changing your life completely, because now you are back at war, because now you are going to be shot at.
And there we were, the barbed wire behind us, the five of us, cleaning from the reddish dust. And we promised each other Christmas at Berlin.
The five men were out, but there was no time for celebration. The tunnel exit was camouflaged so that if undiscovered, others could use it at a later date. Their escape from camp was a success, but now they faced the real challenge, avoiding capture and getting out of England. Cromer and Manhard went north toward Scotland, and Wagner and Wilhelm northwest toward Liverpool. While Franz von Vera headed right into the arms of the enemy. He had convinced a railroad worker that he was Captain von Lott, a downed Dutch pilot, and persuaded the man to call an airfield.
He was a very outward-going person, a very able actor, and probably able to read the way people's thoughts were going and to guide them in his own way. He was picked up from the railway station by an RAF driver in a vehicle, and because he approached the Air Force base in the vehicle, he would have automatically been allowed in.
The duty officer at the airbase had sent a car to pick up Captain von Lott, the Dutch pilot. But he found one thing strange. There was no rank of captain in the RAF. The duty officer wanted to get a look at Captain von Lott in person.
sir, this is
Von Vera repeated his story for the duty officer. He said he was part of the mixed special bomber squadron based at Aberdeen. There was no such squadron, but Von Vera hoped it would sound cryptic enough to be believable.
Air Force, the plane crashed into fallen here.
The officer placed a call to Aberdeen to verify the story.
May I have the command duty post for Aberdeen? Yes? Very good. Tally ho. Tally ho.
Von Vera knew it was now or never.
Yeah, if you excuse
He
me,
casually excused himself to go to the washroom.
Yes? Certainly.
Where he quickly scrambled out a window and hurried across the tarmac.
No, I can barely hear you.
He spotted a mechanic working on a Hurricane fighter. He presented himself as Captain Von Lott and said he had been sent to make a practice flight. Pilots of many nationalities were serving with the RAF, and the mechanic didn't find this request unusual. He told Von Vera that he needed to complete some paperwork before he could take the plane.
Right, then.
Von Vera signed the logbook as Von Lott, but when he listed his nationality, he nearly gave himself away by making a telltale German-style stroke over the U in Dutch. But no one in the office noticed, and they signed over a brand new British plane to a German pilot. Now that he was finally sitting in the cockpit, Von Vera's impatience to be airborne was almost uncontrollable. Surely the duty officer had discovered his rules by now. The mechanic gave him a quick briefing on the controls, then climbed down to hook up the battery.
Yes, no Aberdeen?
Every passing second was agony. He tried to calm himself by making sense of the English indicator panel. Miles per hour would have to be converted to kilometers, feet to meters.
Very good, thank you.
Yes? Stop and get out of the plane!
But just as he was about to start the engine, his luck ran out. The duty officer had tracked him down. Had he been only a minute or two later, Von Vera could have been airborne. Instead, he surrendered and claimed the protection of the Geneva Convention. All 5 escapees were recaptured.
You are under arrest.
Shortly thereafter, most of the prisoners at Swanwick, including Von Vera, were transferred to a POW camp in Canada. But Von Vera never reached it. He escaped again, this time to freedom. On January 24th, 1941, 11 months before Pearl Harbor, he crossed the Canadian border into the then neutral United States. While the diplomats were trying to decide his fate, the German embassy smuggled him out of the country, through South America, and back to Germany, where he rejoined his unit. On October 25th, 1941, he was leading a patrol of 3 fighters up the coast of Holland when his engine apparently failed. He was in radio contact at the time.
His last words were, "Friends, I think I have to take a bath. I would appreciate you to look after me." This was the end of his life. He had kept his special style to the end.
No trace of Franz von Vera or his aircraft was ever found.